By the 14th century, Central Asia had been hollowed out. A region that was once the thriving center of global knowledge had been reduced to a desolate graveyard by the Mongol Empire. Now, that very empire was crumbling into pieces, leaving behind a massive, chaotic power vacuum. Out of that void stepped Amir Timur. He was the son of a minor Barlas Turkic chieftain, yet his persistence was entirely terrifying. To capture the vital city of Samarkand, Timur endured 18 years of continuous effort and absorbed 9 humiliating defeats. Finally, in 1370, he broke through and claimed the city. He now had a kingdom, a powerful army, and a hunger for global conquest. However, he faced a strict legal obstacle. According to the absolute customs of the era, only a direct bloodline descendant of Genghis Khan could legitimately sit on the throne as emperor. Timur engineered a brilliant psychological workaround. He married a Chinggisid princess, claiming the title Gurkhani, meaning son-in-law of the royal house. To finish the illusion, he installed a compliant heir of Genghis Khan on the throne as a puppet, declaring himself the supreme commander. Through this legal fiction, Timur weaponized the lingering terror of Genghis Khan's ghost. He used that inherited, deeply ingrained fear to legitimize his own apocalyptic ambitions to the world. This vintage map of Asia shows the sheer scale of the territory Timur targeted next. To the west lay Iran, a vulnerable cradle of poetry and philosophy. Timur marched his armies across this massive geographic expanse, arriving at the city of Isfahan in 1387. The townspeople initially surrendered and were granted peace in exchange for taxes. Then they made a fatal miscalculation. Under the cover of night, a group of citizens clashed with the occupying force and killed several of Timur's soldiers. The retaliation was methodical and absolute. Timur ordered his soldiers to exterminate the population, demanding every man in his army return with 2 severed heads or face execution themselves. 70,000 skulls were collected and stacked into terrifying, towering monuments of flesh. A decade later, in 1398, the Timurid war machine turned east to claim the immense wealth of India. His forces crossed the Indus River, turning prosperous regional hubs into ash and bone as they marched toward Delhi. Waiting outside the capital, Timur held an estimated 100,000 prisoners. Gripped by a sudden paranoia that these captives might rebel during the upcoming battle, he issued an order that drenched the earth in blood. In a matter of hours, all 100,000 prisoners were slaughtered. Delhi's defenders were crushed shortly after, and the city was subjected to days of relentless plundering. Every campaign served a specific, brutal purpose. Timur stripped the world of its gold and its master craftsmen, dragging the finest stonecutters and artisans back in chains to build his own paradise in Samarkand, while leaving the rest of the earth in ruins. By 1401, this walking apocalypse reached the gates of Damascus, the sacred former capital of the Umayyad dynasty. Desperate to save their city, the defenders sent a 70-year-old envoy to negotiate. This was Ibn Khaldun, a brilliant scholar widely recognized today as the founding father of sociology. Ibn Khaldun attempted to use intellect to disarm a force of nature. He showered Timur with extreme humility, delivering eloquent speeches declaring him the ultimate sovereign of the universe, hoping logic and flattery could appease the warlord. Diplomacy secured safety for a few elites, but the city's fate was sealed. When pockets of Damascus eventually rebelled, Timur burned the Grand Umayyad Mosque to the ground, with panicked worshippers locked inside. The roof melted and collapsed over them. Now only one major rival remained in the west, Sultan Bayezid of the Ottoman Empire, known as the Lightning. Bayezid had recently annihilated a united army of European crusaders and was actively besieging Constantinople, the greatest city in the Christian world. The collision began on paper. Timur wrote to the Sultan, demanding submission and threatening him with the same fate as Damascus. Bayezid, high on his own victories, fired back an unforgivable insult, declaring that if Timur failed to fight him, Timur's own wives would be forbidden to him. Enraged by the personal attack, Timur immediately wheeled his massive army toward Anatolia. Bayezid was forced to abandon his siege of Constantinople to meet him. In a profound historical paradox, the clash of two Muslim titans gave a desperately needed lifeline to Christian Europe. The armies met in July 1402 on the scorching plains of Ankara. Bayezid arrived with 85,000 elite Ottoman and Serbian troops. Waiting for them was Timur, commanding a roaring sea of 100,000 seasoned killers. But Timur didn't rely on numbers alone. He engineered the battlefield. Before the Ottomans even arrived, he captured and diverted the area's only water supply. Bayezid's men entered the fight exhausted and paralyzed by thirst, while Timur's ranks were fully refreshed. As the battle raged, Timur unleashed a nightmare he had brought back from India. He sent a line of massive armored war elephants crashing into the enemy lines. The Ottoman horses panicked at the sight and smell of the beasts, shattering the Ottoman cavalry formation. Then came the fatal psychological blow. Timur had secretly written to the Tatar cavalry units fighting for the Ottomans, convincing them of their shared Turkic heritage. Right in the heat of the fighting, the Tatars turned their weapons on their own sultan. Bayezid fought fiercely on a hill with a few hundred loyal men, but his horse eventually fell and he was captured alive. Dragged into Timur's tent in chains, the humiliated sultan demanded respect. Timur simply laughed, noting the dark irony that God had handed the entire world over to two men, one blind in one eye and one lame in one leg. Bayezid died in captivity shortly after. The absolute destruction of the Ottoman war machine at Ankara proved that when the egos of supreme monarchs demand satisfaction, entire civilizations pay the price in blood. By 1404, the 68-year-old Timur had subjugated the Islamic world from Egypt to Delhi. With his thirst for conquest still raging, he turned his eyes to the ultimate prize on the map, Ming Dynasty China. Driven by sheer hubris, he ordered 200,000 men to march out of Samarkand in the dead of winter. His seasoned generals pleaded with him to stop. His royal physicians warned him his body couldn't handle it. He ignored them all, marching straight into a brutal, deep-freeze blizzard. The cold accomplished what no human army ever could. It broke his body. In February 1405, Timur breathed his last breath in the snow, and his grand vision of conquering China instantly collapsed. The army turned back, carrying his frozen corpse home to Samarkand. He was sealed inside the Gur-e-Amir, a magnificent, heavily guarded mausoleum, trapping the warlord under stone. Amir Timur spent his life shattering the greatest empires, cities, and intellects of his age. He bent millions to his absolute will. But the man who tried to conquer the earth could never defeat death itself.